Greetings and God bless. Welcome to another episode of Pass the Mic. I am one of your co-hosts, Jemar Tisby. Tyler Burns is in absentia. He'll be back soon. But folks, we have filled that seat. We have passed the mic to a first-time guest, Dr. Dwight Radcliffe, a.k.a. Dr. Rad. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the tee up. I feel important now.
Oh, you are, bruh. You are very important.
Come on, pass the mic.
Y'all, I am so thrilled. This is one of those things, one of those God moments where we just happen to be crossing paths at the perfect time. Yeah. So, Dr. Rad, may I call you Dwight?
Come on, man,
on
please.
The podcast?
Yeah, that's what my mama called me.
Maybe. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So you were generous enough to host me at Fuller Houston for a Spirit of Justice book talk.
Amazing.
It went so well.
Amazing time.
It's one of those things where, as dialogue partners, I feel like we had a dynamic conversation. It was organic. It didn't feel too scripted. It was a good turnout. Your questions were right on point. So thank you for that.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. And like you said, it really just, sometimes you get people that, their expertise is the thing, and there was just great dialogue, man, and we had a chance to really go back and forth.
It was really good, and I was like, well, Bo suggested, like, yo, is there anyone interesting who's going to be at this Fuller thing who we might talk to? And I'm like, it just so happens my interviewer is a phenomenal person. So give us your full title, because I looked at it on the screen, and it's about a paragraph long.
I used to carry a scroll with me. I am assistant professor of mission, theology, and culture. And then I serve as the academic dean for the William E. Pannell Center for Black Church Studies. So
at Fuller Seminary.
At Fuller Theological Seminary. So when you say the whole thing like a Tribe Called Quest, it's a long, it's a lot.
So professor as well as head of the Fuller or Pannell Center for Black Church Studies.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk to you, broadly speaking, about what it's like, the challenges, the opportunities of being Black in historically white evangelical institutions. But before we get to that, tell us about your journey to the Pannell Center, because it feels poised to really be an important center and voice for Black Christianity in the academy and beyond. So I would love to know, and I think you're the perfect person to be in that position.
Thank you. So it's hard for me to spend too much time talking about me, but my journey, I think, really is, like you said, it's kind of important because it gives me a perspective that a lot of the career academics that I work with don't always have.
Talk about it. Yes.
Yeah. So I came up young Black kid, South LA, and a single parent home. I went right out of high school. I had to work, so I went to work right away and went to community college, but I never went, quote unquote, away to college.
Were you a Christian during this time?
I was. We're not judging my Christianity at this time, right?
We're not grading. No.
Yeah, I was naming Christ.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I was a struggling young Christian, but I went to work. Started working. Got into some really great positions, like some favor of God, put me in some white collar jobs and working in offices and
no college at this point.
No, I was doing community college, Los Angeles Southwest College.
All right.
Man, if you ever want to do a history project, like LA Southwest College is one of those projects that a lot of people don't really get. It was a college started after the Watts riots, almost as a way of pacifying Black folks.
Wow.
Yeah, and then when they built it, you can't convince me they didn't know when they were building it, but years later it came to find out that they built it on top of a fault line. And the whole complex was never completed. So they just recently came to grips with that and tore down some of the old stuff and then started rebuilding. So I went to Southwest College. I learned early on that there was something insidious about academia because there were a lot of us that were 3, 4, 5-year students at LA Southwest College, which is a 2-year college.
Oh my.
Yeah. My kids clown me that they say, it's because I couldn't finish. And there may be something to that. But the reality was that the way the college was built, staffed, and counseled is that a lot of students couldn't get the classes that they needed to complete their degrees.
Wow.
Sometimes you had classes that were only offered every
every so often.
Yeah.
And you needed that class, and it didn't come around the next semester, so you just had to hang out.
Yeah, and I was working too, so I was doing night classes, so it was really hard for me to finish. And then by that time, just keep it a buck, man. I was working, I was making a little bit of money. Got into ministry, started understanding this call that God had on my life. Trying to fast forward, was in a Pentecostal church. I expressed that I really wanted to kind of get some education. You can't go to school because we got Bible study. These are the things that I was told.
So what were they saying? Like, Bible study is a substitute, or you busy? You got
you can't miss Bible study to go to school. Can't miss Bible study to go to
learn how to
be a minister, to go to ministry school or seminary.
Make sense. Okay.
I didn't, but being obedient, I hung in there, and then after a while, we got ready to plant our church. I was able to finish my undergrad. My AA degree. I was able to finish my AA degree because of the sheriff's department. So I was a deputy sheriff.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that part of the story.
Whole lot we could talk about.
Oh, my.
Yeah. I was a deputy sheriff for about 5 years. My wife was on the department for almost 10 years. And that's a whole thing, being black in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In L.A.?
Yeah.
Were you in South L.A.?
Yeah, we were at LA County Sheriff's Department. So she worked patrol. I worked, when I came out, I went right into the court system. So I saw a different... Yeah.
Once they were already in the system.
Yeah. And the recidivism and the way that people were just being brought. That's a whole nother. Got through that. I found a school that I didn't have to miss Bible study. Did a little unaccredited bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Shout out to Long Beach Bible College. And then we planted this church, and I just knew God was like, you need more. You've got anointing, but you need something more. You want to make sure you're ready to pastor this time right now. So
what year is this?
This was 2008, 2009.
Oh, recession.
Yeah,
Barack Obama elected.
We had lost our home. We had one of those negative amortization loans. Didn't know it. Mortgage like doubled overnight. It was a bad time. We ended up filing for bankruptcy.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it was a horrible time. And in the midst of that, we were planting a church.
Oh my.
Yeah. So
there's no money in that.
That's what I'm finding. Yeah.
There's negative money in church planting.
The negative money is what I
spending your own money on stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's faith.
Yeah.
That's faith.
Yeah. And it was my wife and my sister-in-law that encouraged me to apply to Fuller. I didn't think I could get in because, again, I haven't been a career academic. I don't have a traditional background.
You had your associates. You had an unaccredited bachelor's from a Bible
degree.
college.
Yep. And so I think maybe I'll just go, no shade, I'll go to APU or Biola, because that way if they don't accept me into the master's program, I'll go into the bachelor's program. Man, they convicted me, prayed for me, and encouraged me. Went to apply at Fuller. A friend of mine, Ben Stevens, had just co-written a book with Ralph Watkins, who would become my friend and my mentor.
Oh, man.
And I interviewed with Ralph Watkins.
Yeah. Tell folks who Ralph Watkins is.
Ralph Watkins is currently at Columbia Seminary in Georgia. And if you are familiar with theology and hip hop or the Black church or African roots of Black theology, Ralph Watkins is a brilliant scholar. I think he's up to about 15 degrees now. Yeah.
One of those guys.
Yeah. I think he went back and got like some kind of film photography degree.
Of course.
He's always doing something.
Yeah.
His new hashtag is Scholar with a Camera. So now he's been working on this beautiful project of trying to do photo documentation and documentation of affirming LGBTQIA affirming faith denomination churches and leaders. So so he's doing some amazing work. So I didn't know him. I went in, interviewed with him, and I don't know what Ralph Watkins did behind the scenes. I don't know who he talked to. I don't know who he called. I don't know who he emailed. I don't know if he did nothing.
Called in some favors, pulled some strings.
I don't know. All I know is I got a letter saying you've been admitted into Fuller Theological Seminary, condescending, special status.
Non-traditional.
Yeah. So I came in, finished my MDiv, got a couple of scholarships and a couple of fellowships, did a year studying preaching abroad on a fellowship, and came back, did
preaching abroad? Where?
Yeah. So there's a thing called the Parish Pulpit Fellowship at Fuller. And every year they give it to a preaching student. And it affords you X number of dollars to spend a year studying preaching.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah, so I did an intensive course with Joel Gregory.
Yeah.
At Regents Park College at University of Oxford.
You went to Oxford,
man,
to study preaching.
It was amazing time with Joel and his Proclaimer's Place, and yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Whoa,
yeah.
See, this is why I wanted to talk to you. I know you, but I don't know you. Yeah. What story? Okay.
Yeah, man. My time in and then we went to Rome. So I spent about a week in Rome with Franciscan fathers, Franciscan order. Did some work at the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas.
Wow.
In Rome.
Look at this, South Central LA boy.
Come on, man. Man, and getting there was crazy. That was when my first real conversation with Bill Pannell.
And we'll get to Bill Pannell.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my first real conversation with him. He said some stuff to me.
In Rome or
before I left?
Before you left.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I finished my master's, came back, couldn't do a PhD in preaching because of the way faculty were changing, and Mark Laberton at the time had become the president, so there was no preaching faculty.
Oh, wow.
So, man, and then I had some mentors. All of my mentors, Dr. Love Seacrest, to Dr. Carolyn Gordon, Dr. Ralph Watkins, all of them said, you should apply to a PhD program.
They saw that in you.
I didn't.
Yeah.
When I did my master's degree, I literally went to seminary because I just wanted to be a better pastor. Full stop. That's it.
It was very practical.
I want to be a better pastor.
Yeah.
That's it.
It takes those affirming voices, especially when you're Black in the academy, for people to recognize that in you.
And in case people don't know those names I mentioned, they're all Black faculty. And
Right.
It was the Black faculty that pushed me and urged me. And I said, I'd rather do, again, this is not a shade, I'd rather do a doctor of ministry, because as a pastor, that's a terminal degree. And they just started questioning me like, well, what do you see as your vision, your calling? I said, I really see myself as kind of a bridge between the church and the academy. And they said, well, in the church, to have a footing in the church, you have to be ordained. If you want to work in the academy, to be ordained in the academy, you need a PhD.
That's a good way to put it. It is the ordination
It's
in the
the
academy.
ordination in the academy.
Wow. That's a critical distinction. A lot of people don't recognize the difference between a DMin and a PhD. Will you unpack that?
Yeah. So and part of my job now, I literally talk to people about discerning these two pathways.
Very good.
And I hate that people kind of position them as one is higher than the other. Like that's a false narrative. A doctor of ministry is a terminal degree. There's nothing higher.
It's a doctorate.
It's a doctorate.
Yep.
It's a terminal degree for a professional, a practitioner. If you are a pastor, a ministry worker, a doctor of ministry is a terminal degree. A PhD is a different kind of degree. It is a research-based degree that gives you your driver's license to come play in the academy. And so if you want to, and that's not to say that we don't have faculty, regular and adjuncts that have different types of terminal degrees, but if you want the and I hate it, but the respect.
Yeah.
If you want to be able to navigate the space properly, that's the degree they expect.
And Doctor of Ministry, as I understand it, is a practical degree. So if you are in ministry,
Yes.
whether that's a nonprofit, a church, whatever, this is a helpful degree. A lot
Absolutely.
of it is, I won't say case study, but
Yeah. So we've got some people we're working with now, and when you do a doctor of ministry degree, it really is you come in talking about your context.
Right.
What is the challenge you want to help solve in your context?
It gives you a structured way to tackle a question or a dilemma
Yes, sir.
in the work that you're doing.
Yes, sir.
That's why it's a practical degree. Like you're
Yes.
addressing a problem that you are encountering in your ministry. A PhD, as you say, is a research degree. It qualifies you to teach in a lot of different settings, particularly at the college, master's, doctoral level. And it's just a different beast.
It's a different beast, and I keep trying to dispel that myth for folks that it's just two different paths.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that if you do a doctor of ministry, you can never play in the academy. But if you're going to put a foot in, if you're going to be solid in the academy, this is what's going to be expected of you.
So we're going to pick up on that thread, and particularly your work at the Pannell Center.
Yes, sir.
Right after the break.
Let's do it.
Well, greetings and God bless, family. This is your host of Pastor Mike, Tyler Burns, and I am so excited that we're still doing Pastor Mike 11 years after we started. Think about this. 11 years after we started, we're still doing this. And the reason why we can do it is because people like you have supported us from the beginning. We would not still be here if not for the support of people who are our patrons. And if you go to patreon.com/Pastor Mike, if this podcast has helped you in any way, shape, or form, if we've encouraged you to think more deeply about race and justice, if we've inspired you to make change right where you are, if we've been an oasis in the desert in the midst of toxic church spaces, we need your help. We need your support. For just a few dollars every single month, you can keep us going. You literally, as our listeners, keep us going. So head to patreon.com/Pastor Mike. We're passing the mic to you for your support so that we can continue doing this podcast that so many people love. Thank you so much for your support. If you are already a patron, and if you're not, just a few dollars a month. Thank you so much.
We are back with Dr. Dwight Radcliffe. As they told me, he's Dr. Rad. So
That's what they say.
So we're talking about your journey to the Pannell Center for Black Church Studies at Fuller Seminary. Yeah. It's called the Pannell Center, for short and lovingly.
Yeah.
After William E. Pannell.
Yes, sir.
Introduce us or tell us about him.
Yeah. So if you are familiar with evangelicalism and specifically Black evangelicalism, people know Skinner. They know that name a little bit more. But Bill Pannell is one of those names that if you've been around evangelicalism, Black evangelicalism, if you've been talking about justice and evangelicalism, you've been talking about race and evangelicalism, man, through the 70s, 80s, that was the guy. Mm-hmm. And so he came to Fuller as the first Black trustee.
Yeah.
First Black trustee.
That's governance, y'all.
Yeah.
Yes.
And our late president, Dr. Hubbard, saw that and invited him into that space, man. And then he became a professor, assistant professor, I believe it was, of preaching, was dean of chapel for a while. Mm-hmm. But to know Bill Pannell, and there's a wonderful documentary that's out now.
Yes, hype that up.
Yeah, we'll make sure we shoot that information, the link and everything. But this about an hour and 58-minute documentary on the life of Bill Pannell. You have to watch the documentary, number one, if you know Bill. Mm-hmm. But you also have to watch the documentary to really understand how did we get where we are right now. The documentary, because it takes this chronological look at Bill's life, it also takes us through this chronological look at Black evangelicalism.
Yes.
And that's the bigger story that's actually playing out. The Urbana stuff, the InterVarsity stuff, the Skinner and Associates, all of that stuff plays out in the documentary.
It's called The Gospel According to Bill Pannell.
The Gospel According to Bill Pannell.
It is out now. We'll post a link in the show notes. I was honored to
I was going to say, come on, man. Your name is on the piece.
Some bookends in it. They were very generous to give me producer credits on that documentary. Bill Pannell, if folks have rocked with me, you've heard me talk about him. He's a personal mentor and friend of mine. Yeah. He's 96 years young.
Yeah.
And still rocking it out.
Still rocking.
In 1968, he publishes the book, My Friend the Enemy.
My Friend.
Which paves the way for folks like us.
Paves the way and closes a way, which is what we're still struggling with today, right?
So let's talk about that. I was talking about being a Black person in these historically white evangelical institutions. What really intrigued me about you, so we had another episode of Pass the Mic, where we were talking about trust.
Yikes.
And so we were talking about trust, like me as a Black person, and kind of being arm's length with white people at first, because I want to know which kind of white you are. You know, are you self-aware? Are you anti-racist? Or are you going to be one of these ones who, plays in my face, right? But I also talked about trust regarding other Black people in institutions that have maybe not been the best toward Black people. Because I'm like, well, why are you there? So when we first met, I'm like, okay, what kind of Negro is this?
Yeah, because you don't know.
Yeah, and I'm just being honest. You know me well enough at this point.
You don't know.
I'm not trying to be offensive, but I'm just like,
You don't know.
There's an institution here that no matter what an individual's motivation, you up against something big. So tell us, you know, I know you went through that thought. You wrestled with God. But in the end, you took the position. Why was that?
I remember finishing my PhD, and Mark Laberton was on my dissertation committee. I remember going into Mark's...
Former president of Fuller.
President of Fuller Theological Seminary.
White guy.
Tall, white Presbyterian pastor. Like typical. Like when you look at him, he looks like the typical Presbyterian pastor.
Snazzy dresser too. Great hair.
Yeah.
I'll say.
Oh yeah. But Mark is if you know Mark,
Mark.
He's a genuinely loving person, like great pastoral heart. But I went into Mark's office, man, and I just started cussing and screaming. Like, you know, when I finish this degree, I'm out of here. I'm never coming back. I can't stand this place. At that time, we had we had a black exodus that had occurred. In our school, at that time, we had a school of theology, a school of intercultural studies, and our psych school was still there. Every black faculty that was there when I started my master's degree, by the time I started my PhD, was gone.
That ain't long.
No, all of them were gone. I mean, all. So when I got hired in 2019, the School of Intercultural Studies, I was the first African American in 2019 that the School of Intercultural Studies, School of World Mission, I was the first African American that they had ever hired.
And you're emphasizing the African American part because they had hired internationally. They had hired people who were from other...
Dr. Jihu Hansels.
Yes.
Yeah.
But other people of color, but not an African American, which is different.
And which says a lot about even colonial mission, right? Like it's always been an emphasis about over there.
Talk about it.
Yeah, it's the way I described it for several of my professors is that it literally builds a bridge for homelessness. That when you do mission, the colonial mindset of mission is that I've got to go to Korea, I've got to go to Kenya, I've got to go. So when you build that bridge to go, there's those of us that live here, and we literally just live under the bridge.
Wow.
Homeless. We live under the bridge, under the overpass of your mission. Yeah. So working with that, like navigating that as a black student, it wasn't until about maybe a year or two into my program that I even recognized that other black folk had studied intercultural studies and missiology.
You didn't see them.
I didn't see them. And again, this is no shade. My school knows I love my colleagues, but when I was studying, I was asking for help reaching out to a black missiologist because that was part of my dissertation. That was one of the tutorials I needed, and they could not find one. Whoa. So I found one.
Okay.
And much love to Dr. Marcia Snelligan-Haney, formerly at ITC, retired now, runs a website, Urban Missiology. She graciously led me in a tutorial. And then as I started reading up on her, you know where she did her PhD? Fuller. Theological Seminary. So I said,
they didn't even, this is an alumnus.
I said, how the hell I'm here needing this and you guys don't even know?
My.
Yeah. So reintroducing her. And I've been using, much of her work and models. And
yeah. So that's your context going into the president's office. You're like, peace out.
Yeah.
I'm done.
And because as a black man with a PhD, God bless all of my white colleagues. And I had several that I talked to. When you have a white man or a white woman with a PhD, you can go wherever you feel like going, period, full stop. As a black man with an earned PhD, when I go to an institution, I have signaled something. I have signaled something to my community. I've signaled something to the people that follow me. I've signaled something to the people that are supporting me, that are praying for me, the communities that I represent.
Yeah.
I'm signaling to them that this is a safe space for you to come into.
Exactly. Yes.
And at that time, when I went into Mark's office, I said, this ain't it.
Wow.
And I can't come back here.
You can't convey that message to other black people, to other people in your community, that if I'm here, it's okay for you. You can jump in the water too.
No.
You said, no, it's not okay.
I said no. And to his credit, Mark helped implement a lot of substantive changes.
Okay.
And we had some hard conversations, and he was able to do some things. And again, people mistake. They don't understand that the president of the seminary is really not in charge of everything. It's just not the way it works.
Just gets all the blame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he implemented some wonderful change. And then I come here prophetically because my wife, who we were walking on campus one day, and she pointed to Ralph's office. And she said, one day that's going to be your office.
Okay, Holy Spirit, what's going on?
Now that girl's tacked in with God. If she say it, it's going to happen. And sure enough, 2019, I get hired, and the office I move into is Ralph Watkins' old office.
Wow.
And I mean, I cried. So where I am now, as I sit here in this job, is because of my journey. I take that part of the Pannell Center very seriously. When it started in 1972, Theological Studies Program for Black Ministers, it literally started as how do we take Black clergy who have an aptitude but who don't have a traditional academic background? How do we create on-ramps for them into the seminary?
Right.
And then how do they then also help to benefit what's happening in the seminary?
Yeah.
That was the goal.
Okay.
The Pannell Center today is trying to do that in a very new, a renewed and refreshed way.
So I want to hear more about that, but we got to fill in some gaps. Number one, to the extent you're comfortable, what kind of challenges were you facing as a student at this predominantly white evangelical institution?
Yeah, these are on record. We literally had a black, like I said, the black exodus of faculty.
Okay.
And if you line them up, and we're talking about like 4 or 5 faculty, each of them may have a different story, but then the whole together tells a larger narrative.
Okay.
And there was, many people felt like there was a black glass ceiling, that they could only go so far. Others felt as though they were just being really damaged in their student evaluations in ways that white professors weren't.
So being looked at and judged more critically, more harshly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
By majority white students. And then
So students evaluate each other?
we have course evaluations. At the end of the quarter, the students evaluate the professor.
Okay.
So the faculty were being, black faculty were being judged differently than white faculty.
Got it.
Because we approach a course differently. Our pedagogy is different. Our methods are different. And so that was happening. And then it just became toxic. We had a protest on campus during one of our baccalaureate services.
I remember that.
Yeah. And it was a difficult time for us, but we instituted some stuff. We had a strategic approach towards inclusive excellence, and we made some strides, and we did some things, and things were happening to where I felt this is not just a safe space, but I can come here and I can contribute.
So that was my second question to fill in the gaps. What was the thing that moved you from going in the president's office saying, I'm never coming back here, to now being in charge of the Pannell Center?
Again, this prophetic wife of mine. So they were hiring for not my current position, but we had a position kind of underneath this position, a director.
Yep.
And some folk, and I knew about it, but I wasn't going to apply. Mm-hmm. And then I blame him. I'll call him out. Phil Allen. Phil Allen was on the search committee, and he just said, "Man," he said, "Doc, would you just at least look at it?"
Black guy, white guy? Black
guy.
Okay.
Yeah, just finished. He's written two great books. One is a documentary called Open Wounds about the lynching of his grandfather. Wow. Oh man, powerful stuff. Documentary and everything. But Phil, who just finished his PhD, Dr. Phil Allen, Phil said, "Would you at least look at the job description?" I said, "I'll look at it. That's it." But I looked at the job description, and I messed up when I showed it to my wife.
Oh.
That's when I messed up.
She said, "This you."
That's exactly what she said. And so I said, yeah. And at the time, there was another person there that I thought I would have some challenges working with. Mm-hmm. Just some cultural differences. We see the world very differently. And so I said, man, I don't know. And so I had a sit down meeting with him. I said, look, let's talk. And he, to his credit, he came down to my church and we talked.
Wow.
To his credit.
Yeah.
And we talked through some stuff and how we thought it would work out. And I really felt God kind of saying, yeah. And then institutionally, it was the changes, the strategic changes, the DEI stuff that was happening. It was the way syllabi were now being revisited and revised. There were real things happening. Yeah. So I felt like even though it is still a historically white institution. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. But looking at all historically white institutions, we're much better than most. I
would say, if you didn't know the history and you just showed up on campus, whether Pasadena, Houston, it does look a lot different than most evangelical seminaries.
It does.
And I concur in terms of the steps being taken and particularly the personnel being brought in. So there's you, which is significant.
Yeah.
There's also your president.
Yes. And I was on the search committee.
Okay. So now he can blame you.
Woo, Lord Jesus. The ways that white normativity play into things, it's just seeing it at different levels. And again, not saying that somebody is particularly evil, but just the way of their viewing and processing data and information sometimes. That was a painful process.
And they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Until somebody's in the room to point it out.
And I know you want to get to this in a minute, but sometimes the cost of that, man, sometimes keep it a buck. Sometimes I just want to walk in the room and just be in a meeting. I don't always want the responsibility of being that guy.
The voice for the entire black community.
For every minority, for every minoritized person, sometimes I just want to attend a meeting.
A burden too great to bear.
Man. And I really, not shameless promo, man, but I felt what you said about Mrs. Evers. Like that thing about that justice, that spirit of justice, how it just rises up. There's sometimes I go into a meeting and I'm just like, I don't feel like talking. I'm here. I'm just here.
Yeah.
And then something happens and I'm looking like, so ain't nobody else gonna say nothing. Damn it. I mean, I'm sorry.
You good.
Okay. I'm like, all right, fine.
Got to speak up.
And the Du Boisianness of that, though, because then you start recognizing that the more you speak, the more people start seeing you as the person that speaks. And then there's that push-pull where your voice at some point gets diluted because they feel like every time you speak, it's always something.
It's always about this race thing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm working on it. Pray for me.
But it's that tension of if you don't speak,
that part,
nobody will.
Pastor Jean Birch, who is a board member at Fuller, alumna of Fuller, she is an amazing person, and she was also on the search committee when I got hired. I went to her and I told her I was just kind of getting tired of having to speak up sometimes. And she looked at me and she said, and she looked
you up and down.
Oh, bruh. And she's a small, petite, she's a small little one, powerful woman.
Very demure.
Yeah, very, very classy, very, very demure. And she just kind of looked me up and down and she said, that's what we hired you for.
Yes, ma'am.
And the way you describe it, my back got stronger, my legs got, yes, ma'am.
I'm saying,
yeah.
Listen, I know a lot of black people who quite understandably say, I don't want to be the race person.
Yeah.
I can talk about other stuff.
Yes.
I can talk about this, that, the other. I totally get that, and I'm supportive of it. For me, it feels like a calling. I'll be the race guy.
Yeah.
I'll be the one who talks about it.
Yeah.
Because so often we don't have the voices in the room.
Yeah.
So often if we do,
yeah,
and I'm talking about black folks, they are so conditioned to tiptoe.
Or they bought in. They just bought in.
Or they bought in.
They bought in.
What I always say.
Yeah, they bought in.
If you are in predominantly white institutions and you insist on talking about racial justice, you either get pushed out, burned out, or sell out.
That's about right.
So, and I believe in seasons too. So I've been in those situations, and I believe God works in seasons. I believe God calls. I was talking to a young lady at the event last night, black woman at a predominantly white church, wrestled with God, didn't want to go to the church, period.
Yeah,
but then God called her into eldership at the church, wrestled with God again, and she's like, okay, I guess I'm committed now because she stepped into the leadership role. So I totally get it. God working in seasons, and this is not critiquing or, calling out black people in predominantly white Christian institutions. I just wanted to understand a little bit of the cost of it, the struggle of it. I think for white people listening, this is a hard decision.
It is.
And a hard calling, because you're giving up a lot. I mean, as a black scholar with a PhD, you could be a lot of places.
Yeah. I mean, like legitimately. That's not a narcissistic moment. That's a fact of reality that Black PhDs are a small percentage of the market,
Yes.
and folks, for evil or not, are looking for them. But it's a burden. It really is. And I try when I talk to my sisters, I try to equate it to this. There's a way that men tend to do women. That if women keep talking about issues, eventually men will just say, "Oh, she's emotional." That patriarchy, that misogyny, right? Oh, she's just emotional. And there's an equivalence of that when I have to speak up about matters of race, ethnicity, culture, inclusivity, diversity. Like, you become, oh, that's just your thing. You always got something to say about that.
They tune you out.
Yeah. And so my struggle has always been trying to find my rhythm of having sometimes the sharpness of Malcolm and sometimes the passion of Martin. I'm never either or. I carry both of those voices because they're both important.
And both of them did too.
Come on.
You know, we have a very flattened picture of each.
They both have informed and stained one another.
Yes.
And so trying to navigate that is important. And I want to say this, like, yes, I work at a historically white institution. Yes, there are times that it is extremely challenging and it's costly. But again, I affirm that of all the places that I could be, I'm grateful to be at Fuller Theological Seminary. And that's just something that when I went into Mark's office, I couldn't have said at that time. And now, do we have issues? Yeah. Do we have stuff we're working through? Yeah. Do we have our first Black president? Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Goatley, shout out.
Reverend Dr. David Emmanuel Goatley.
There you go.
Yeah. Is that a challenge in and of itself? Does that bring about? Yeah. Am I talking to colleagues and trying to help them navigate some of their own microaggressions and kind of hidden? Yeah. But in the midst of all of that, it's still a great place, man. We get some scholars and students from all over the place.
I see you light up around your students.
Man,
I love to see it.
I love it. I love journeying with them and getting and helping them to navigate the space too.
Right. Now you're in the position that your instructors were to help you, and that's why representation in these spaces is critical.
It matters.
Critical. Now I'll say this. You're at the Pannell Center for Black Church Studies, so that helps.
Yep.
You can focus on this. You can be honest about this. And this is what I would say to Black people in predominantly white spaces. Find your enclave.
Yeah.
Find the space in the institution or even external to it where you can be you.
Yeah.
Where it's safe.
That's true.
Where you can still cultivate your Blackness or whatever your ethnicity, right? If you don't have those spaces and you're sort of surrounded in this bubble of whiteness, that's when you really get in trouble. That's when you start, tiptoeing, selling out, those kind of things. So I'm grateful that you've had that experience. We could talk on and on and on, but I think you've given an incredible recruitment pitch.
Come on, man.
Come on.
Just come on.
And I do want to shout out again the Gospel According to Bill Pannell that is available for free. Watch that online. Yeah. And brother, I can't thank you so much for helping us, guiding us, sharing from your experience. Thank you again to Dr. Rad.
I'm honored, man, that you would pass me the mic.
There we go. Thanks for joining us on this episode. And we will remember to subscribe, rate, review, all those good things. And we'll see you soon on the next Pass the Mic.